BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And just a quick reminder, every Monday is Zodiac Mondays. Wednesday is an Ask Me Anything. That's an AMA, so please drop your questions below for things that you would like discussed here on the show. And Friday is an Anything Goes. Any subject is fair game, mostly talking about true crime, serial killers, the Zodiac Killer, but any subject is welcome. All right, so please share some ideas in the comment section about what you would like to hear about on this channel, and let's get started. Okay, hello everybody, it is Wednesday, time for the AMA, that's an Ask Me Anything, and we have a lot of questions and comments to get to about the Zodiac Killer as well as some other true crime cases, but first I should mention that you will be seeing an image on the screen from time to time from the Fuller Center for Housing. The Fuller Center for Housing. They're a charity group that I've been following for a while, and they do things like building homes for people in developing world nations all around the globe. And also, you can find out more about this in the book The Tattered Passport by David Snell, the co-founder of the Fuller Center. It is available on Amazon.com. I'm currently reading that book now, and it has a lot of good information just about how life goes on around the world in various other countries, and the challenges that you experience when trying to interact with people to do projects in various nations. So once again, the Fuller Center for Housing. Now, we often begin these AMAs with a borrowed question. I said we would get to some things about the true crime very soon, and we will. But first, one borrowed question that comes to us from Jaleel White. Jaleel White is perhaps most famous for being known as Steve Urkel on Family Matters, as well as a host of other media projects. He did the show Grown Ups, he's done lots of voice acting, but because I followed him on social media, I eventually subscribed to the Jaleel White newsletter. Yes, indeed, that is a real thing. And in the newsletter, he was promoting a show called Under the Influence, available on Instagram TV, Under the Influence, on Jaleel White's page. And the episodes are coming out rather regularly. There are already several of them out. But he asked a challenge question in one of his episodes. Which 5 celebrities would you want on a slapboxing team? 5 people on a celebrity slapboxing team. And I was like, wow, what a good question. So I thought about it for a little while. And the first one that I would put, instantly, Mike Tyson. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, Mike Tyson on a celebrity slapboxing team. The second one I thought about was Caesar, the dog whisperer, because as a dog whisperer, perhaps he's good at controlling bitches. The third would be Richard Simmons, because I once saw an episode of Inside Edition, you know, like Deborah Norville back in the day, where Richard Simmons slapped a guy in an airport once, and that guy either had Richard Simmons arrested or he tried to file a lawsuit, maybe both, but there was definitely some type of legal ramifications, and that's what they were talking about on Inside Edition. So Mike Tyson, Caesar the dog whisperer, Richard Simmons, and then I thought Conor McGregor, of course, so that's another self-explanatory one because he can fook you oop. And then number 5, I would say Simone Biles, because I was like, those are all men. I was like, I gotta have at least one woman, and Simone Biles may be small in size and stature, but I bet she could pack a very powerful punch, or in this case, a slap. So those are my 5 celebrities that I would want on a slapboxing team. And if you would like to put your responses to that in the comment section, think of this as an icebreaker, a warmer, if you will. But in terms of simple questions, I think there's another one that I can answer very easily. Sometimes you guys will ask questions, and I try my best, but I'm like, well, maybe I'm completely wrong about the answer to these things in the AMA, but this one is from New Unfinished. What's your podcast name? That's the question, and this one I can answer. It is called Black Box Online Radio. Sometimes I like the slow ball, softball questions. That one I knew off the top of my head. No, but in all seriousness, I think what New Unfinished is talking about is some people ask from time to time, is this show available on iTunes or something like that? And the answer is no. This is exclusively on YouTube. Of course, we do the bonus podcast on Instagram TV once a week. Now, lately, it used to be coming out every day, but now it has turned into a weekly journal of sorts. But yes, we don't have any type of iTunes page. The first time somebody asked me that, I was just absolutely shocked because it was back in 2017 or 18, back when I was just putting out 14-minute segments with just the black box, hence the name Black Box Online Radio, because I thought for some reason that was like eerie and mysterious. And someone was like, "Hey, do you have this stuff on iTunes?" And I'm like, "This is just a black box on YouTube." I really didn't even think that anyone would listen to it, but people started tuning in to say what they wanted to. People also wanted, like writing in the comment section, sharing what they believed about these true crime cases, as well as some of the other subjects that we would get into from time to time, but mostly on the true crime side. Now, our next one comes to us from JT. That's just the username, JT. And there are going to be two comments that we have from JT. There's another very good one about the Zodiac Killer coming up, but this one simply says, "This guy needs to change his intro. It sounds so dorky. Everyone who hears it wants to punch him in the face." I've read that multiple times, but I'm just really trying to hold back from laughing. All I can say about that is, that's not what your mother said. No, okay. Gotta make like a Black Box Online Radio mean tweets edition or something like that. We got a lot of good ones like this coming in. Please, anything is welcome. On to some stuff about the Zodiac Killer. We have a comment from Pedro Fernandez who says, "Will you redo the interview with Drew Beeson?" And yes, I interviewed Drew Beeson, who is the author of the book Citing In on the Zodiac Killer, and as well as his. We also did an interview with him once about his book Paratrooper of Fortune, talking about his suspect in the D.B. Cooper case, Ted B. Braden, and in the Zodiac Killer mystery. Drew Beeson proposed Don Chaney as a Zodiac Killer suspect, Donald Lee Chaney, who is perhaps more famous for being the friend of Arthur Lee Allen. Will you redo the interview with Drew Beeson? I don't see why not in the future. I mean, because it wouldn't necessarily be a simple redoing of the interview. Perhaps we could also get into some of the newer material. Drew Beeson is also the host of the show The Zodcast, and if you're going to listen to any of his material, I highly recommend you check out his episode number 16. I was going to do something, and Drew Beeson beat me to the punch. I wanted to do an entire episode on the previous arrests of Ross Sullivan. And Ross Sullivan is a suspect that people just love to talk about on the internet. I really noticed this. Like, people just seem to be very up in arms when it comes to things about Ross Sullivan for some reason, even more so than perhaps Arthur Lee Allen, because I find that so many people are just still very passionate that Ross Sullivan was indeed the Zodiac Killer. And, well, I'm not really going to give too much of that away. Instead, I would just invite you guys to check out Drew Beeson's channel and his show, The Zodcast, episode number 16. And there's like another bonus episode that came after that where he reads off some information that Tom Voigt from ZodiacKiller.com had written about the suspect Donald Lee Chaney. So I highly recommend that one as well. But perhaps in the future, yes, we will have Drew back on the show. In regards to Don Chaney as a Zodiac Killer suspect, I said that we had another comment that came in from JT, and apparently he made it past the intro, and it says that we should be able to narrow down the suspect list because we know that the Zodiac was barrel-chested, stocky, a white male, outdoorsman and hunter who could sew, 20 to 40 years old, 5 feet 8 inches tall to 6 feet tall, 180 to 250 pounds. Now, I want to know, has he been following Drew Beeson's material? Because that's the stuff that really gets into, well, why people would think that Don Chaney is the Zodiac Killer. Because as I understand, we don't exactly know, but Don Chaney was estimated to be around 6 feet tall, and he would have been around 200 to just over maybe 210, 220 pounds. That seems like what was described of the perpetrator at Lake Berryessa. So when someone is proposing a suspect that is very skinny, then it becomes a little bit difficult, because when they said at Lake Berryessa that Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard could see that not only is the perpetrator barrel-chested, but he is also fat, and like they can see the fat hanging over his belt line, then that really rules out a lot of the skinnier suspects. And Gary Stewart, of all people, the person who proposed Earl Van Best Best as the Zodiac Killer, his biological father, was saying, okay, yeah, Earl Van Best was a skinny guy, but maybe he was going to prison for a while, and in prison he would have eaten a lot of high-calorie prison food, and he wouldn't have exercised, so he got fatter. I mean, that's Gary Stewart's explanation for that. I don't really entertain that. I think that that's just some guy messing around. And the thing is, though, Gary Stewart had a great story to tell about Earl Van Best as a criminal who was involved in a nationwide scandal of his own, where he pretty much abducted a 14-year-old girl and got married to her in an illegal way in Nevada. And her name was Judith Chandler, who went on to become the biological mother of Gary Stewart. And you can hear all about this in our multi-part book discussion on The Most Dangerous Animal of All by Gary Stewart and Susan Mustafa here on Black Box Online Radio. There was also a great documentary series that was made by FX, now available on Hulu. Yes, I fully admit theirs is better. Now, on to the next question here. We have two things that came in actually. Like, I mean, these were just coming in minutes apart, more or less. It was really quite shocking. We had Joseph Dale says, one day they will find the Zodiac Killer, and it will be just like the Golden State Killer. It will be someone that wasn't on the radar. And then, like, these two things came in minutes apart, I kid thee not, because K. Vincent Woods says, my opinion is that the Zodiac will never be found. Only if we had his name could we maybe make that happen. I believe that he always had the choice to get to be caught or not, and I will not give you my name because it will slow you down and such. So, I mean, two people are just saying these things like back to back, and I was like, well, which one really is it? Will we get certainty in this mystery? Because it's not only about who was the perpetrator, we still have ciphers that are unsolved, as well as perhaps other meanings and hidden clues. And I think even if they could all agree on the consensus, like if there was a complete consensus on who the Zodiac Killer was and who committed the murders in 1968 and 69, then they would be like, well, did this individual also commit other murders? And I mean, we were talking about some of that stuff in our episode on the Michael Cole theory, which I'll say in just a second. I'll say something about that. But, I mean, they would first be trying to attribute that suspect to additional murders. Then they would be trying to solve the Z13. They'd be trying to solve the Z32. And there would be so many other things like, are there hidden meanings in the Halloween card that people haven't found? So, I don't think we will ever get the entirety and certain of, all the answers. We won't get all of the puzzle put together and figured out, but what most people are simply concerned with is, who committed the Zodiac Killer murders in 1968 and 69. I think that maybe in 20 years we could have a very good understanding of this, and I only say that because of David Orenchak and Sam Blake and Jarl Van Eyck, those three guys who were working to solve the 340 cipher, and mostly did so to everyone's satisfaction, because prior to that I was like, okay, we've learned everything we can. Yeah, we can give commentary, we can speculate, we can theorize, we can say, I think this is what happened. But once we had the discovery of David's solution to the 340 cipher and recognizing that it's actually somewhat of a viable and good solution, then like, hey, wait a second, answers can be obtained in this mystery. So I think that it's possible that we could figure out who committed the murders, and there could be an understanding and consensus in the general public that, yes, indeed, this is what happened. Like, people could actually come to some form of agreement if new evidence comes out, or some researchers able to present something in a way that convinces people. So I'm going down the pathway of, yes, one day this individual will be identified. However, if it's going to happen in 20 years, then it's highly possible that everybody who had anything to do with the Zodiac Killer mystery could have already passed away. And I don't think we would have a Golden State Killer ending in the sense that you could see the person being on trial, you could see the person in the courtroom, and then having to listen to victim impact statements. In 20 years, it's highly possible that all of the victims will have passed away, but I just thought it was rather interesting to hear both of those comments come in at the same time. Now, I said that we had something to say about the Michael Cole theory, because I did an episode recently called Zodiac Revisited, Michael Cole Theory, and we were responding to Michael F. Cole's book, Zodiac Revisited Volume 3. He has 3 different volumes out now, and they're available on Amazon.com. And I changed the title of that one because I changed it to Zodiac Revisited Michael Cole Book Discussion. And I said very clearly in that episode that I was only 2/3 of the way through the book, and then once I completed the book, perhaps we would do a future episode on Zodiac Revisited, and that will most likely come out Monday, unless there's some groundbreaking, earth-shattering, absolutely overwhelming new development in the Zodiac Killer mystery. Then for the next Zodiac Monday, we will do something called just that, the Michael Cole theory, because I changed the title of that first episode because I felt that I was drawing upon or dwelling on some other sources, and I was using information from other theorists, as well as my own previous Black Box Online Radio episodes, and I was like, I really didn't spend enough time talking about Michael Cole's material and what he thinks about it, so to give an honest shake and to give an honest chance to this person to actually put out an episode called Michael Cole Theory, I would really want to focus in more on what he says about the Zodiac Killer, as well as, okay, here's some things that Michael Cole has said in his book, and then let's compare and contrast that to other Zodiac Killer researchers and old episodes of Black Box Online Radio that aren't even about the Zodiac Killer, but just about other true crime cases in general. So, most likely Monday we will do one on that Zodiac Killer Michael Cole theory. I hope to have that, hope to have finished the book by then, but we will be doing something very big for the Anything Goes segment this week, so lots of reading going on, as well as trying to keep up with The Tattered Passport by David Snell. Our next comment comes to us from Neoclassique. That's Classiq. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Neoclassique. And Neoclassique has something to say about Gareth Penn, and that is that Gareth Penn's birthday was the 1st of January, 1941. 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 9 plus 4 plus 1 equals 17. And just when I thought that I could put all of this Gareth Penn stuff to rest, for about 2 weeks I was going through a lot of Gareth Penn material, looking at his suspect, Michael Henry O'Hare, as well as the murder of Joan Webster in 1981, which Gareth Penn tried to link to the Zodiac Killer. And we also interviewed Joe from the Zodiac Killer Insight series. We did a book discussion on The Second Power by Gareth Penn, which Joe shared with me. I really have to say thank you for sharing that book with me, but I thought that we could put this stuff to rest. But what did we just say Gareth Penn's book is called? Times 17. And that and that ties into a mathematical theory that Gareth Penn composed about the Zodiac Killer, saying that, for example, the murder of Sherry Jo Bates occurred on October 30th, 1966, and the murder of Joan Webster occurred, what was it, November 28th, 1981. I hope I got that right, because it's very important, because that's 5,508 days, 324 times 17, and hence the title of Gareth Penn's book, Time 17, becomes the signature of the Zodiac Killer, or the mathematical persona of the Zodiac Killer, more or less. And then you have Gareth Penn's birthday totaling up to 17. Oh my gosh, there's just so many things about that. That just gives you chills down your spine when you look at some of that Gareth Penn stuff. And Joe from the Zodiac Killer Insight series is convinced that Gareth Penn was the Zodiac Killer. But not only being the Zodiac Killer, but also committing the murder of Sherry Jo Bates, as well as the murder of Nikki Benedict down in Poway, California, which occurred on the 1st of May, 1967. Now, when it comes to the murder of Joan Webster in November of 1981, Joe says very clearly he cannot connect Gareth Penn to that. He thinks that it's possible, so he accuses Gareth Penn of 7 murders, and then a possible 8th, just being clear to give him a fair chance in all of this. And our next comment comes to us from Sir Jorah Mormont. Once again, I hope I'm saying that correctly. And that was on an episode about the myth of the Zodiac Killer when we did that book discussion. And it says, human beings have a pathological need for closure. Yeah, absolutely. Human beings just have a desire for knowledge, and it's almost as if even if someone can just see that somebody has a secret, that individual wants to learn what that secret is, even if they don't want to do anything with it. So many times other people are just like, hey, you need to talk about that thing that you know that I don't know. People are always just trying to press individuals to reveal things so they can learn information, and it's just so it's a desire. It really is, because often once they actually do learn what that secret information is, people don't do anything with it. They just have this desire to learn about it, and part of it is closure, part of it is to get all of the pieces of the puzzle put together, and it's also about it's also about acceptance, and some people just like have something that is much more so than just learning about what someone else's secret is. They have a much more valuable reason to learn that. Like if they have a murdered family member, they just will be dealing with that for the rest of their life. Well, what happened to my family member? And if there is someone who could be brought to trial, then that person needs to face the justice system. If they murdered someone's family member, absolutely, then they should be put to trial and go through the legal proceedings. And human beings do have this here. I completely agree. Human beings have a pathological need for closure. I think that that is a good point by Sir Jorah Mormont, and it's something that needs to be re-emphasized from time to time. Okay, thank you to everybody who's listened to this segment on the Zodiac Killer here. Please stay tuned, and we will be back after this quick message. Bum ba bum 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 ba bum 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 ba bum bum bum. At this time, I would like to talk about some of the ways in which you can help Black Box Online Radio. This channel relies on your support, and the best way you can help out is just by listening to some more content. If you like what you hear, you can hit that like button, subscribe, and share with your friends on social media. But I should also say that Black Box Online Radio now has a Teespring page, and there will be some links in the description box. Please feel free to check out some of the merchandise that is available. Almost all sizes and colors are listed. So, you can also help out by going over to the Zodiac Killer channel and watching the documentary series Obsession into Darkness, parts 1, 2, and 3. I was one of the contributors for that, and you can see some other great Zodiac content on the Zodiac Killer channel. And yes, there will be a part 4 of Obsession into Darkness at some point in the future. And for now, let's get back to the show. Okay, hello, and we are back. Moving on with some questions and comments in the AMA. We have one that comes to us from One Does Not Simply, that's the name of the YouTube user, that says, eyewitness descriptions are not reliable. Throw them out the window already. And yes, this was left on a Zodiac Killer upload, but I think it's very relevant to many true crime cases because it's just that. That's a fact. Eyewitness descriptions are not reliable, especially when you hear some of the descriptions that people give in countless mysteries when it's just someone's driving by in their car and they see something out their window for a split second and they think they know what they saw, but in turn, it turns out later on that maybe it's something different, or perhaps that is the only piece of evidence that people would use to support a particular theory. Just one eyewitness description of someone who just saw a person walking by, it becomes very difficult because the human brain has a terrible ability to remember things, and it doesn't matter who you are. I mean, unless you're one of those savants out there, there are probably going to be things that you're going to forget, or you're going to have false memories or mistakes. I mean, we are always subject to imperfections. And I often cite Scott Adams because I follow his show, Real Coffee with Scott Adams, and he was telling a story once, and I have to paraphrase some of the things, but he was working in I think it was a bank actually, and the bank was robbed, and then like the person was wearing like a brown jacket with a blue hat and a red bandana over their face, and then he's talking to the police about it, and they're like, well, what did the perpetrator look like? Well, he was wearing a brown jacket, a blue hat, and a red bandana over his face. Then they went back and reviewed the CCTV footage, and they found out that okay, well, I mean, the guy is wearing a jacket, but it's not brown, it was black. Okay, and he's wearing a hat, but it's not blue, it is also black. And then, okay, he has a bandana over his face, and it's not red, it's orange. So it's just like, I mean, those are, as I said, I'm paraphrasing some of the details, but that's like the basic points about it. Every single thing that he was saying about this person that held him up at gunpoint was incorrect. And it's like he's like, I have these memories that are just so vivid, but then when I watched it on camera on the CCTV footage, it was nothing like what I was remembering. And I think that that just illustrates a point, even though I had to add in certain elements to correct my own flawed memory. But eyewitness descriptions are not very reliable in true crime. However, so many people like to use these because they become the foundations of some of the more far out theories out there, especially when we get into things that are outside of the true crime world and looking at UFOs and someone just sees like a flash of light in the sky and then they aren't necessarily sure what they saw, but then they're like, oh, immediately it has to be a UFO. And false memories definitely do take place when someone can really begin to add layers onto it. And our next comment is one that says, I really appreciate this broadcast. It has the ambient of old-time radio. Hey, that's a big compliment. Thank you so much. That was definitely the ambition that I had when I was starting out with the channel, and as I said, just putting out those 14-minute segments with the black box up there. A show that I do recommend that is very reminiscent of old-time radio is The Hour of the Time, that is hosted by William Cooper, and some of his material was uploaded onto YouTube. The problem with that stuff is there were just so many ads and commercials and gaps in between the narration. I love listening to William Cooper, and for a short period in 2020, I was really caught up with Mae Brussel and her show Dialogue Conspiracy. Once again, some of her material from the 1970s has been uploaded onto YouTube, and you can listen to that. Mae Brussel was also interviewed on various other shows talking about conspiracy theories, the JFK assassination, the Zodiac Killer, the Manson family. Now, if you go back and listen to some of our episodes on Mae Brussel here on this channel, Black Box Online Radio, one thing that I really need to share and just to say over and over again, pretty much just be like banging the drum and shouting from the rooftops about is Tom O'Neill put out a book called Chaos very recently, and he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he spent 20 years writing his book Chaos, and he's talking about this huge discovery that Charles Manson was a CIA informant, or that Charles Manson was an informant for someone. His exact description of it is he was an informant, but we won't know who he was an informant for. Informant meaning that he was someone that people were using to gather information. It does not mean for a second that he was an operative or that he was like some type of direct assailant on behalf of another law enforcement agency. They were using him to gather information. And Mae Brussel was saying all of this stuff in the 1970s. If you go back and listen to Dialogue Conspiracy, she was just saying that, like the way that the Manson family and Helter Skelter operated is, Charles Manson must have been an informant, and you can go back and find that on her show Dialogue Conspiracy. And it's no disrespect to Tom O'Neill. I think Tom O'Neill is absolutely excellent. He just sounds like a brilliant authority on the Manson family case. And another person out there who's been writing about the Manson family a lot is an individual named Ivor Davis, who has been following the stuff since the 1960s. And his claim to fame is that he has been following the Manson family for over 50 years. It's crazy how time goes by, right? But he is a little bit different because he had some initial suspicions about the case, and in short, he thinks that the murders at Cielo Drive, the Tate LaBianca murders, took place as a way to he thinks that it was the drug deal gone wrong theory, which not everybody supports, but it's like he thought that from the very beginning. So a lot of people accuse Ivor Davis of confirmation bias in that respect. But when I interviewed Mark Hewitt on the channel, I was asking him about the Zodiac Killer. Of course, Mark Hewitt is the author of the Hunted trilogy of books about the Zodiac Killer, but he also delves into the Manson family, Madeleine McCann. And I just asked him, what do you think the motivation for the Tate LaBianca murders was? And he said very simply that he thinks that it's the more of the mainstream narrative that it was Charles Manson trying to get revenge on either society or the Hollywood elites because he felt that he got cheated out of his record deal and he wanted to do something very nasty in response, retaliating and such. And if Mark Hewitt, if you're listening to this, if I misstated anything or misrepresented any of your claims, feel free to weigh in the comment section. But I have to confess that I do think that is a little bit more plausible because Tom O'Neill said very clearly there is evidence to support the idea that the murder of Sharon Tate, as well as everyone else in the house with her, like Wojtek Frykowski and Abigail Folger, everybody else who was there, and as well as the LaBiancas, Leno and Rosemary LaBianca later on, that there is evidence to support that was a drug deal gone wrong. He says evidence to support, but by no means is Tom O'Neill convinced of that. And we pulled up that one documentary once, which is oh, I can't even remember the name of it. That shows, talking about imperfections of memory. But it was very good because it was about the relationship between Charles Manson and the Beach Boys, and they just had three very well chosen sound bites that they're just playing in order when they're saying that Manson said very clearly that his motivation was because he felt that promises were not kept up. He felt that he had been cheated by the music industry. Terry Melcher didn't honor a contract and such. And I would really just say that I don't even want to go off on any more of a spiel about Charles Manson, because if I'm going to be giving such brief sentences and such a nutshell version, it's going to come out in an incorrect way, and something's going to be left out, and something's going to be misrepresented. So instead, I would invite people to go back and listen to some of our old Black Box Online Radio episodes. The Lies of Susan Atkins, that's one talking about Sexy Sadie. I still don't know why people call her that. She seems rather crusty, in my opinion, but beauty is in the eye of the beholder, as well as you can also hear my story of Charles Manson. Those episodes are available here on this channel, and we also have a series on the early life of Charles Manson, which gets into the material that was put forward by Stephanie Harlow. Our next comment comes to us from NPC Porky that says, "The Melvin Belli letter had a piece of Paul Stein's shirt sent with it. The Zodiac clearly sent it. The 1978 letter was a hoax. I'm not sure, but I think Sherwood Morrill reacted to it and reached that conclusion." And this is talking about the Zodiac Killer, of course. I made a claim in a previous episode that I thought that the 1978 letter was a hoax, as well as the Melvin Belli letter, and he's saying that, okay, the Melvin Belli letter had a piece of Paul Stein's shirt in that. I'm not even going to go back and try to dispute any of those facts, because I can provide you one explanation. I mean, there's definitely someone who else also come to a similar conclusion as me independently, and I'm not saying that I'm right 100%. I've been wrong many times. This is just a possibility, being very clear. This is just one possibility about how there's this Zodiac letter called the Melvin Belli letter and the 1978 letter, and how they could be written by the same person and still not be the killer. It's mentioned very clearly in the myth of the Zodiac Killer, and if you go back to our book discussion on that, you can hear more about it, as well as just listening to Thomas Henry Horan on his channel, The Stones Unturned. He is the author of the myth of the Zodiac Killer, as well as the Great Zodiac Killer hoax series. And that is that there was an active participant who was working with the person who wrote the original Zodiac letters. And I don't mean to go off on a spiel in a different direction and saying that he has identified that active participant as Robert Graysmith. He accuses Robert Graysmith of writing the 1978 letter and the Melvin Belli letter. And whoever took that piece of Paul Stein's shirt provided him with that sample. I mean, that's actually the first time that I've read that the piece of Paul Stein's shirt was mailed in with the Melvin Belli letter. I'm not even going to dispute you. I'm not even going to dispute that fact. I'm going to take your word for it, because I think that I just wanted to say that someone else has addressed that thing, and my interpretation of the letters was just by looking at it, and that was one that we did a couple weeks ago from the AMAs. Thank you, though, for NBC Porky for providing that comment. And we have a comment that came in on an episode called Paris Bennett Debating Psychopath, and it's just from Kayla Hillary, K-A-L-A. It's either Kayla or Kala. So thank you to Kayla for the comment. It simply says, "Well done, sir." I'm really surprised that people would still go back and listen to some of those old gray box recordings. They're not the ones that have the black screen, but it's the gray box that has the gray screen, and a lot of people have been tuning into the episode about Paris Bennett. The reason why it's called Debating Psychopath is I was trying to determine, was an individual named Paris Bennett a very good clinical example of a born psychopath? And that's where the debate truly is. And Paris Bennett was someone who murdered his sister, and he has been interviewed extensively for this, and he still has a very odd relationship with his mother. And there was a channel called Paradise Media that put out a lot of things about the kind of insider secrets about Paris Bennett and the murder of his sister. And then I've read off this comment before, but this is one from Masked Identity on the episode Paris Bennett Debating Psychopath that says, "Actually, sociopaths and psychopaths do feel stuff. While psychopaths have an emotional deficit, sociopaths are emotionally disturbed. Their emotions are just different." I think that that is very important, because as I mentioned many times on this channel, the first episode that we did that talked about psychopaths, sociopaths, and narcissists was on Braulio Castillo, the CEO that murdered his wife, and it's called that Braulio Castillo, a psychopath, narcissist, murderer, I think is the title of it. And we were looking at some of the material that had been laid out by Dr. Ramani. That's the name of the YouTuber. I always butcher her last name, Dervu Sala. I can't pronounce that too well. I really should by this point, because she simply made the comment that a psychopath or a sociopath is blank on the inside. They have this facade and this exterior, and it actually may be as many as 12 different personas or personalities that they're using, but she's like, they're blank on the inside. And I took that to be a little bit too literal, and this is what Masked Identity is talking about in the comment that, I mean, just saying that they don't feel things, because Dr. Ramani also explained this by saying a narcissist is someone who is going to feel things that are public emotions like shame, guilt, embarrassment, whereas the psychopath or the sociopath isn't going to feel that. I definitely do use Dr. Ramani's yeah, breakdowns of this very frequently, saying that well, just I mean, I should say it's not her original observations. I learned about it from her that a psychopath is someone who is born with it. A sociopath is someone who develops it later in life. Society or the social surroundings have affected their personality. The lack of a conscience, meeting the 20 different points and criteria on the hair checklist. And it's a hard thing to say because there's a thing called the hair checklist that determines if someone is a psychopath or a sociopath. There are 20 items, and you can get a score of 0, 1, or 2, meaning the maximum score is 40 points. And if you get 30 out of 40 on the hair checklist, then you're a psychopath or a sociopath. We've done it before on the channel. If you want to go back and listen to our episode, What is an Anti-Psychopath? And that talks about some other stuff as well. But okay, so a psychopath is born with it, a sociopath develops it later in life. All psychopaths and sociopaths are narcissists, but not all narcissists are psychopaths and sociopaths. I'm being very clear. She didn't come up with that. That is just something that people very frequently talk about, and that was the first time that I ever heard that breakdown done in that way, and this was all years and years ago. But she made that comment, though, when that a psychopath or a sociopath is blank on the inside. And I interpreted that to be that it was too little, that they aren't feeling emotions. And as a couple years later, after going through many things about psychology that we've talked about here on this channel, absolutely that's not true. I mean, that is of course, especially though when I started learning more about Ted Bundy and just how emotional he was. And if you want to talk about things, shame, guilt, embarrassment, okay, those things are definitely things that people would feel. How about fear? How about things like someone is afraid of what's going to happen, or they're having insecurity and problems with anticipation and decision making? Absolutely, psychopaths and sociopaths are very emotional. So I think that's an important thing to say. But I would invite anyone to also listen to our episode, Paris Bennett, Debating Psychopath, if you want to hear more on this discussion. And the last thing that I would like to do today is to talk about the recent passing of Larry King, the former host of Larry King Live, as well as radio broadcaster for many years, working with RT. If you've seen any news coverage over the recent days, I'm sure you have heard something about the passing of Larry King. And Larry King was a broadcaster that had a particular influence on me, not only because he wore suspenders that really got my attention, and we started off the show talking about Steve Urkel. That's another pair of suspenders that also grabs attention, but I digress from that. With Larry King, I remember a particular episode that he did of Larry King Live, where he was talking to Sanjay Gupta, their chief medical correspondent, I think he's called with CNN, and Michael Moore, the filmmaker, documentarian. And like Sanjay Gupta saying something like, okay, he said that the figures were 5,700. They're actually 4,900. And Larry King was just like, so what's the problem? So what's the big idea? They're practically the same. And ever since then, that episode, which happened, years and years ago, was after Michael Moore did the film Sicko, whenever that came out. I really began to pay attention to Larry King, and I noticed that he was very good at highlighting about how people get worked up over things that aren't that significant. There's a lot of making a mountain out of a molehill. There's a lot of trying to highlight almost irrelevant issues or nitpicking at very small things that aren't really true to the issue. But people will often try to blow things out of proportion that suit their agenda. And ever since that episode, I noticed that Larry King was very good at that. And if anything, that was perhaps one of the better qualities that he had as an interviewer. A lot of people didn't like Larry King for many reasons, and I can even be critical of his of him in some ways. There's some things that I would say off the top of my head right now, but after somebody has passed away, I mean, you can always give a moment of tribute. And I would just like to kind of just share that little thing there that I just went through about paying attention to how are certain people trying to blow things out of proportion. How are they trying to show off that they have this little statistic or this little tiny factoid that maybe is somewhat loosely connected to the issue, but it doesn't really change the heart of the issue, and it doesn't really change the heart of the matter. So no matter what, whether we're talking about true crime or we're talking about some other subject like politics or religion, no matter what subject we get into, I would just like to say, do you ever have those experiences? I can turn the question over to you, like where you just think someone is trying to argue something, but their point is so irrelevant, it doesn't really make that big of a deal. Maybe you can think of a personal experience that you've had in your own life. And, I mean, bear in mind, though, it doesn't mean that they're wrong. And in fact, their information could be 100% correct. However, it's like, it's not that relevant. It's a point, but it's a very weak point, and it doesn't change the heart of the matter. Okay, so that was just my little concluding thing. Rest in peace to Larry King. And if anybody would like to respond to any of the questions that we've gone through, or any of the comments about the Zodiac Killer, true crime cases, or any of the other material mentioned at this AMA, please drop something in the comments section below. I would love to hear from you. I would love to read your comments. And see you on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.